Okay, we did that. So some of this from the literature that's out there, and there's a few different people that are talking about effective learning and using reflection for learning. The 4 elements that are required for effective learning in general are relevance. And so that's the first thing. It has to be important to you. You have to see this as being important, because if you don't, you're not going to. It's just like our clients, right? If they don't think it's important, they're not going to do it. You know, if my client, I believe that getting exercise most days is a really important thing for your day, especially for mental health. And if my client doesn't think so, they're not going to do it. So I'm not even going to suggest it. So it needs to be relevant. And I'll tell you this story. I told this yesterday and it was kind of fun. So relevance. I've been visiting with my brother and his family. He and his daughter have this argument about the toilet paper roll. You know how you put it on, and families have this all the time, whether it should roll out towards you or in towards the other way. And it's never been an issue for me. Never, ever, ever thought that was important. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me which way it goes on. So they were talking about this. I always have to turn it around, and they're both saying that they're right. Until my brother said, "But did you notice that there's a rough side and a smooth side to the toilet paper?" I had never noticed that before. So suddenly this becomes relevant, because I went to the bathroom and I pulled off the paper, and it does matter which way it goes, because it matters depending on which side of the paper you want to be next to your skin. I know that sounds funny, and it depends on how you ball up the paper too. So, if you scrunch it or fold or roll, that's right. There's different methods. And so for me, the way I ball up my toilet paper, it's really important for the roll to come off towards me. So, yeah, it suddenly became relevant. It hadn't been relevant to me before. Now everybody's going to go to the bathroom. And look at that. So then also there needs to be some reflection. We need to think about what it is that we're doing. How does this apply to me? We'll get more into that too later. There also needs to be some action. We need to actually do something in order to learn. And there needs to be dialogue. And this isn't just for reflective education. This is for education in general. So dialogue, or talking with other people, getting ideas, testing your own ideas with other people. You can come up with an idea and somebody will, maybe give you a different way of looking at it just through the dialogue. So going back to Donald Shawn, he later on, this was later in the 80s, the first quote was from the early 80s, he sort of started shifting things a little bit from reflecting on action, so thinking about what we did and what we were doing, thinking about things after we did it, to thinking in action, so reflection in action. And we're going to do both of these today. So that's thinking ahead or during the activity while you're doing it. And you guys do this. You're thinking on your feet. You're using your therapeutic use of self by adapting what you're doing as you're doing it. What I'm hoping that you're going to do is start to realize that that's what you're doing and be very aware of it. So it's thinking while you're doing it, analyzing it while you're doing it, and really experiencing it, and then responding to it while you're doing it. And both of these are good, and both of them are important. Another thing that we need, particularly for reflective learning and for reflective education, is to have a critical incident. And so that's when a routine, something that you're doing that's routine, something happens that it's not fitting, or it's not working the way that you always thought that it should, or there's an unexpected outcome. And this can be good or not good. Sometimes it's, you go and you come out of a session. Well, yesterday was a critical incident for me, very pleasant. We had a really good workshop yesterday, and it felt really good to me, and I thought, wow, and I wasn't shaking nearly as much this morning as I was yesterday, despite the cameras. So it's sometimes when we have a critical incident, it can be actually a little bit, it can be unsettling, and you can get frustrated or mad, or have some different emotions. So that's when you start to notice that things aren't right. And sometimes you have that before you start your reflective education. Sometimes it happens because you're doing reflective practice, because you're really thinking about it. Somebody said yesterday, it's hard to do because I'm afraid of what I'm going to find out. Very true, because you never know sometimes. For example, the witch from Snow White. You guys know this person? Her critical incident, every day she went to the mirror and said, "Who's the fairest of them all?" And she said, "You are, you are." And then this one day, I'm not sure what happened that day, whether Snow White just came to town or do you guys know what happened? Or did she turn 16 or something? I don't know. And that one particular day, the mirror changed it, and that's a critical incident. That what she was expecting wasn't right. She got mad. And she went off to destroy Snow White. Has anybody had a critical incident that they can think of? Anything that's happened that sort of throws you off? I'll tell you one for me. When I first went to work overseas in the Middle East, very, very, very different culture. And I went there as part of a team a Canadian team, and our mandate was to set up a rehab center. We worked in our own teams like we do here in Canada, and we were to show the Kuwaitis our Canadian model and to teach them how to do it the Canadian way. It wasn't actually that easy to do, and in fact the first year was kind of miserable because it was the Ministry of Health that had invited us and not the therapists. And so, we're going in. The OTs were actually quite good. The physios had a much harder time than we did. But I can remember I worked on the neurology team, so we did some seating and mobility, we did spinal cord injury education. I helped an OT set up, start to develop the services in the acute neurology hospital. They had no services there. But I remember one day, I'd probably only been there for about 3 months, and at 3 months you're getting at your peak of, has anybody had really good culture shock? Yeah, like you have to be there for 3 to 6 months, you're really getting uncomfortable. So I was there and helping with a seating project, and there was this girl, and I was trying to figure out how to get her seating, and suddenly I said, "Why isn't she in school?" They said, "Oh, well, she doesn't go to school." She was like 12 years old, she doesn't go to school. And I was like outraged. Why isn't this child in school? If they were in Canada, they'd be in school. And I was so upset about it. Going back, and I was there for 3 years, so I learned a lot in 3 years about what's right and what's wrong, and there is no right and wrong, is what I learned. That in that setting, that may or may not have worked. But for me, that was a huge critical incident in opening my eyes about, I'm not always right. Oops. I'm not always right. And there was a real a disconnect between my beliefs and what the realities were. Does anybody else have an example? No? Has anybody been an OT to an OT? I've had the pleasure of being an OT to an OT. That's hard. There's another one, and it happens, the critical incident happens before you go to see the OT, because you've got to be good. You've got to be really good. They've had their injury or whatever it happens to be. Actually, my very first experience being an OT to an OT was years ago, but that was at a rehab center, and it was a gal who had a really serious motor vehicle accident and had all kinds of broken bones and stuff. But I was for a couple of people over the last year, it was the sole OT, working with them, teaching planning, pacing. It's amazing as an OT that we know all this stuff, right? And to practice it is not as easy as we think it is. So it's happened a couple of times. And actually for me, another critical incident is about 8 years ago, I developed my own disability. I had an acute reaction with arthritis, and I couldn't walk. So I was using crutches I used crutches for about a month and then went to a cane for about a year. And during that time, I practiced all of my OT skills on myself, and it actually works. It's really cool. Like, your pacing does work, you know, you get up from your desk every half hour, it does work. Getting into the bathtub, if you use your technique, it works. It does. So if you guys have had anything like that's happened, whether it's pleasant or unpleasant, you know, anything that could happen through the day. So you can have these, emotional reactions. And so sometimes they're just like that same, the behavioral management tool. We might feel mad. Has anybody ever done that at work, where the system is holding me down? I'm mad. You write a really nasty letter. Yep. You can be embarrassed. Oops, I dropped that client and I should have asked for help. Has anybody ever done that? Yeah, see, now when I start saying the ones that happened to me, you guys are all going, yeah, it happened to me too. Yeah. You could be confused, or that's not what I thought it was going to be. You can be frustrated or sad. Sometimes you get really sad. Stuff that happens in the news makes me really sad sometimes. Not that I can do anything about it. And then what do? Sometimes we yell, we write those nasty letters. We don't really do we really go kicking and screaming or anything like that? Not at work, but we might do it at home. If we're critical incidents happen at home too. All this stuff that we're talking about isn't just for work, it's for all areas of our life. So when these things happen, one of the things we need to do, and hopefully we can do it, is suspend disbelief. That means our disbelief is everybody else is wrong. You know, the way that I'm doing it is right. You know, and so we have to hold that, put it off to the side for a little bit, and open our minds to see that maybe there's other things going on that I need to be aware of. So it's, this quote, reflective practice is as much a state of mind as it is a set of activities. It's a way of looking at things and a way of being. For example, maybe Snow White is the fairest in the land. Maybe she really is. Or maybe the old lady the old witch was just getting old, and she needs to get a better fitness routine. Here's one. I don't know. She's not quite as fair as she used to be. Here's one for me, and I learned this one a long time ago. Has this ever happened to you? Everybody is a jerk. Everybody. Everybody's irritating. Yeah. Suspend that idea. That actually isn't possible, that everybody else. Usually the problem's in here. And so now I try, it still doesn't always happen, but when I start to notice that everybody's starting to irritate me, that's when it's my time to pull back, do my full stop, actually figure out what's going on. We also need to actively ponder. We need to actively problem solve. And we need to be critical. Not criticize, but be critical. So we don't want to tear down. We don't want to be egocentric. And we also don't want to tear ourselves down. We don't want to beat ourselves down at all. We need to be open-minded. We need to look at what's good and what's not good. And again, we do this with our clients all the time. We find the common ground. We find what is it that we're doing that's good, and then let's start building on that. If we could be our own therapists, I think we would do really well. Because in questioning assumptions, we do that all the time with our clients. What if you tried exercising in the morning? Do you think that might make a difference? And Yoda, he's a really smart guy. I like him. Somebody rephrase this. Can anybody rephrase this in Yoda words? Does anybody know how he does? He said, I found this quote, many of the truths that we cling to depend on our point of view. So it really, to me, it illustrates that we need to examine our own personal truths, look at them, and be critical about those as well. And like Yoda, reflection tends to be quite peaceful and quiet, and that's why I like to keep bringing people back to the present, back to ourselves. A lot of times our work days are really rushed, and there's so much going on, especially in the bigger hospitals, and you've got a million different things to do. And one of the challenges is to stop that and bring yourself back so you can reflect, because it's really hard to reflect when there's a lot going on. So let's, perfect timing. We're going to do a little exercise, and then we're going to take a break at 10:30. So it's just 10 after 10. So this will be good timing again. So how do we do this? One way to do it, and we're going to start with the big picture, is to use some structured programs. So like the program that we used, the Sue Baptiste's and Sarah Rochan's exercises, the exercises in this other book. There's the enabling occupation. CAOT has a couple of different workbooks out that you can use. There is one that is specifically, that's the enabling occupation one. So there's a few of them. There's this one is specific. It's professional development through reflective practice. And this was put out, Elizabeth Kinsella, or Ann Kinsella, I think she goes by, she put this out right when I was finishing my master's. And all of these references should all be at the back of your notes there. So this is a workbook of different exercises that you can do, and you just work through them. You can do them on your own or as a group, or do them on your own and then discuss them. So that's one way of doing reflective practice. And what I'd like to do, so this is really reflecting on action. So what I'd like to do, we've written in some of our professional development goals. If you go in this, on page 4, in this little handout, this is what I've done with these exercises. I don't think I've taken anything exactly verbatim. I either modified exercises that I liked or made them up myself from from things that I thought would be helpful. This exercise, career defining moments, we call those wow moments. Like, wow, that was really good, or wow, that didn't go so well. What I'd like you to do is do this exercise, but do it on your own. And we're not going to discuss it today. You can take it and use it for discussion later if you like. But there's a reason why I want you to do it, and just keep it to yourselves. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later on. So if you guys would take the next, say, 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes even, we've got time. And when you're done doing this, then we'll take a break, get up and move around. But go through this exercise of defining some of your wow moments. So why did I become an OT in the first place? If you can remember that. I can remember exactly why I became an OT. It was, I'll tell you, since we have a few minutes. Back in the 80s, I had no idea what OT was. Nobody knew what it was. And I was really resourceful. And I went to, in my high school, we had our resource teachers. And I went to them and said, I don't know what I want to do. I could be an artist, I could be an architect, I don't know, I could be a doctor, who knows. So that was just when computers were coming out, if you guys remember that, when computers first started. And they had this program, the Choices program, which I think is still used. And he gave that to me, and I filled it all in, put it in the computer, and it came up with occupational therapist. I said, "What's that?" And he said, "I don't know." So he looked it up in the book, the DOT, and looked it up. And it said, this is what it is. And I said, "Oh, that sounds interesting." And he said, "Here, go shadow somebody. There's somebody at the hospital." And there were probably only 3 in Halifax at the time. And so I did. I went and shadowed a couple of OTs, and I thought, that is just the coolest thing ever. I was, how old did I say when I graduated? I was 12. I was 12. I was a child genius. And I was 22 years old when I graduated. I've been an OT for 28 years, and I love it. I love every day that I do it. That's why I became an OT, is so that I can help people. I get to help people do their everyday activities, and I think it's really awesome. So that's why I became an OT. But then there's also some positive career-defining moments. What happened that's happened through your life that has made you either wow or that's not what I wanted to do? So both. And then what was great about it, what wasn't so good about it. And then looking back now, if you can look back, how did those experiences change my practice? And then how has my practice changed over time? So you guys go ahead and do that exercise. And it's just for yourself, so you can say whatever you want.